I am.
Okay,
All right, Tony, you got it?
I got it. Says you're the host.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right, let me share the screen and good to go.
I'm calling this meeting to order. It's 6 o'clock. I am Marion Stay. We have Tony Bolduc and Lisa. Yeah. And we've got a variety of people. Stan Reinheimer and Dan Smith are on Zoom. Those are basically the planning commission members. Oh, and Carol Jones just showed up on Zoom.
Right.
So we're rather informal here. We also try to keep the meeting to an hour. And it's so cold, I'm hoping it only takes an hour. We have basically two things on our agenda. One is just a plan of conservation and development update. And I was hoping that Zoe would give us that, since we really haven't discussed anything since our last meeting. And then we're discussing the Harbor District discussion. Or the Harbor District. As what to do in terms of the plan of conservation and development. We hadn't really discussed it so far. Hoping for people from the area to come in. We had somebody show up at the planning meeting in December, actually, with a possible proposal for housing in the factory building. Nothing more specific than that as a possible development. And he cannot make it tonight, so we're just going to go ahead and discuss the Harbor District in general and what we want to see in the plan of conservation and development.
Sounds good to me.
Else is coming.
All right, so I'll jump in. If you don't mind. So
Oh,
we had, just so everybody knows what happened. A representative from the lace factory came in and would like to turn the lace factory into, entirely residential homes or, condoize the property. That's not actually allowed in the zone at the moment. We've had small discussion about this, but figured we would put it at the PoCD discussion and see how everybody lives around that area, want to talk about it. Could have their voice, so. Not need any more info from me. If you guys want to just shoot from the hip at this, what are your thoughts? Please.
On the map.
Oh, who are you?
Sorry, Mike Joya. Little Seabrook Road. On the map, where is the waste factory at?
The lace factory is number 28. The Harbor District is all of blue.
Thank you.
All right, so that's all. That's it.
Right now, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I was gonna read actually what we have at the moment for regulation for the Harbor District too, just so everybody was kind of fresh on that. So section 7A, 7.1, building in which light manufacturing is to take place, be a historic building built prior to 1900 with a minimum 50% of the building having documented prior history of similar light manufacturing use. 7A, 7.2. No additions to existing historic buildings shall be constructed or expanded. Constructed for expansion of the light manufacturing, fabrication, processing, compounding, treatment, assembly, maintenance, repair, packaging of goods or products. 7A, 7.3. No outside storage of equipment, merchandise, materials, or supplies will be allowed. And then they have additional requirements for site plans, et cetera. But those were, it was kind of light and lively on what they wanted there. The They actually have a whole section for restaurants, and preparation for food processing, sales of foods, and products. So that's pretty much all they've kind of narrowed down to the Harbor District. But if you go into the table of uses, it's just single family homes. So it doesn't require or doesn't allow multifamily. So anyway, those are the thought, that's the regulations that they said, so. Anybody else from the Harbor District or the area questions? Okay,
Can I ask, would you,
please.
what their discussion of the overall planning process of having that area be commercial or, how do I put, of interest in a, not that I want to say touristy, but in a way that would bring in people and business and venture, is that the drive that you're looking at too?
So originally, the POCD had mentioned a mixed use in the area down here, and you kind of have that if you look at, other areas in the Harbor District. So if you go over to, where they store the boats, there's actually, mixed use over there. Thank you. Safe harbors. They have mixed use over there. And when Angus was selectman, that was the same discussion he had. He'd always envisioned, smaller shops on the bottom floor, like a kayak rental or an ice cream shop, were the two that were brought up. But again, those never made it any farther in the POCD, which we're working on now. And they're not, they don't really aren't well defined within the Harbor District regulations.
And there's not a lot in the Harbor District that on one hand is allowed. I mean, everything is, just about everything other than single family houses are allowed by special exception.
Yeah.
And I think even restaurants,
Yep.
and going through it's kind of odd. There's a under 3,000 square feet, and then there's an over 3,000 square feet, and they're both special exception with no differences. So,
I actually know what that is. It's because when they were all combined into one big chart, they had a breakdown. And
okay.
so when they were, all the zones were in one big chart, it's just a carryover from that. But yeah, I mean, if you do look at it, a lot of the stuff is, mixed use kind of, have a mixed use. A lot of it's just commercial activity, like manufacturing, offices, business, drinking establishments, et cetera.
And I,
Mixed commercial things.
So again, the talk was always to make it mixed use. It's not, it's either it's one or the other. You pick single family homes, you pick, some of the uses that are like manufacturing.
What stage,
Yeah. Got,
like to know, on Main Street, keep really connect. At what stage, if at all, has POCD placed upon, now that this is a new revelation, tying the possibilities of that area downtown for the overall plan?
so we had always talked about having a specific meeting with the Harbor District, hence here we are. So that's part of the discussion. Does it get tied to downtown? I know Jonathan Kastner at one point got the rentable trolley from Saybrook, the one that drives, but he said that there wasn't a lot of use for it, so before my,
there's good discussion, but it's always vague.
yeah.
It's just vague, like, oh, it'd be nice to tie it. There's, it's like walkable. You can walk there. There's a couple areas where the sidewalk doesn't exist, but mostly you can walk there. But nothing specific. And again, it brings up, it seems like, a lot of contrary emotions, where there are some people who would love to see the kayaks and all kinds of things, and there are other people that would be the fate worse than death to have that down there. They just want a reservation. So,
Lauren Stewart, 134 Kirtland. I live right next to the lace factory. So my question is the lace factory for sale?
Don't know the answer to that. It sounds like the way it was, the way it was worded was that the developer is somebody that Angus knows. Of course, so.
So as a resident living right next to them, if what they say is true, I take a little bit of a grain of salt. It's going to be something. We prefer that it was residential, all of us living there, spending a lot of money on our homes, and not, retail on the first floor. I just don't see how that would, benefit anybody. I can shop and turn down the street, canoe kayak rental, marine launch. Valley Railroad has the primary real estate on the landing minus our little section. So these are my questions. I first would
I'm
like
in a
to,
meeting.
speaking for me only, I just like to know what the plan is. Are they gonna develop it? Is the developer coming in to develop it? Is it for sale? What are the next steps? Seems very ambiguous at this point.
So I am Bob Ginder. I live at 137 Kirtland Street. I'm right around the corner from there. I have a couple of things that I wanted to mention. One is, as you mentioned, it's not zoned for multifamily. But I also wanted to mention that the R30 district, which is next to it, is also not zoned for multifamily either. So you're putting, if this proposal would go through, you're putting in a multifamily, not just in the hardware district, but in the R30 zone, which also doesn't allow it either.
Well, we would be, I think this is just for the Harbor District.
Right, but they're kind of surrounded entirely.
I see what you're saying.
They're surrounded entirely by R30. So
Gotcha.
while they're not R30, they are part of our zone.
Sorry, I
Just
misunderstood.
because of, a horseshoe surrounds their
Yes.
entire property. So that's one of the things. So I am not really in favor of a multifamily. I've lived in that house for 26 years. In the 26 years that I've lived there, there have been 2 apartments there and 1 office, I think. When the lace factory took over, they eliminated one of those apartments and it became just a 1 apartment and an office, I believe. And I would like to see it maintain what it's been for 26 years, which is just 2 apartments max. Another thing that I wanted to mention as well is, 5 years ago, another neighbor and I filed an injunction against them through the courts. And I just wanted to remind everybody, for some people who may not know, that it was due to a nuisance caused by the lace factory. And whether that property sells to somebody else or sells multiple times to somebody else, that the court-ordered injunction is there permanently to prevent certain things from happening. So I want you to keep in mind that when you go through this process, that you look at our injunction and see what it specifies, because anything that's a nuisance would be in contempt of court. So I just wanted to bring that up, that that's an important consideration as well.
Anybody else from the audience or commission?
What type of influence does the POCD ultimately have? Is making a determination about the best use for the property?
So it's supposed to be a guideline for the town. We don't have to 100% abide by it, but it's supposed to be your base for how your regulations, where the town goes. But again, because you do this on a 10-year basis and, 3 years, if something changes in the town, that's gonna be something bigger. You can always guide by that. But it's definitely something you want to guide your town. So and again, this is where you get public input, I think you got a lot of these people live down there. You want their input. You don't want to do this in closed room with no one to go, hey, we know what's best for the town, and that's it.
You have background on when the Harbor District was created, the intent behind that particular boundary and the governing, made clear with village districts, what the intent was. And what begins to characterize this zone is the waterfrontness. And if not waterfrontness, the character of the historical function, which was, there's a whether it's non-conforming or not, it's referenced in our standard of manufacturing. Not to be expanded, but as an allowable use. And so you look at the historic context.
So I looked and I cannot for the life of me find, so you're supposed to have, a list of amendments in the back of your regulations. And I don't see, I've seen where, the PCD was added, where the zones were reduced, where the PRD was added. But I can't find that where the Harbor District was added.
This was done at the same time as the village districts, right?
Was it? I don't know. That's,
I could be wrong, but I thought when I bought my house in 99 that there was no harbor district.
I think it was created at some point.
I think,
yeah,
I don't know if I'm correct, but I don't remember hearing about the harbor district until maybe 5 years after that.
Yeah. I'm with you. I never know when I'm correct either.
Yeah. So I don't want to claim to be correct. But I was pretty sure that when I bought my house in 1999, that everything was residential R30 at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I also thought that the lace factory asked to be moved from R60 zone into the.
Well, that's what I think happened. I
Yeah.
think that it was when they purchased the property in 2007 or 2008. I think that was what instigated the harbor district.
Okay, yeah, because
So I can be asked to be moved into another district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So
you're gonna be part of Essex. I don't, so you're thinking right around when the village district was discussed, so I'll have to look into that.
I believe that's my recollection. And if we have to go back to, that I think the best way to determine this is to look through the history of the published zoning maps. Because it's a zone boundary, and that would have been handled in the publication of the zoning map.
Let's take a look at that. That's a good.
I thought Jonathan just said they just made
I thought so, too, but I can't find it.
put up the signs because it sounded pretty.
Well, that's the lighting.
That's a conversation that I thought I had.
Yeah, but it's not true, because there is a published zone with regulations and required an act of the commission. So,
I think you're thinking about another sign that's in town
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah.
Somebody did just put up a sign that said something, landing neighborhood. And that wasn't really an official
So that'd be
zone.
2004.
So maybe that's what you're thinking.
2020.
Yeah, so we're looking-
3, 4, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, we're looking at those couple of years there.
2, 3.
Okay,
It's a plan of conservation development. The last one is 2015.
yeah,
And that clearly has a harbor zone, a harbor district,
Yeah.
and plans for it.
Police factory property now.
okay. Well,
so you think that change that came into existence for the 2011 issue?
that's what, yeah, so I mean, we have,
Answer to that question.
I think we'll look at the three of them, right? The 97, the 2002, and the 2003.
My guess is it's the 2011 date.
Then
Yeah.
we'll look at that.
Okay, you think it's that one?
Yep.
So so it would be prior to that, because I think, right, that's this one.
Yes. Yeah, because that would be, so the funny thing is, village districts were established in 2008 or 10, right?
Oh, 2011, yeah, so the maps took effect 2011, probably,
So
probably the
the-
revision.
In terms of it being published on a map, I think it would have been 2011.
Yep.
So the village districts.
Yeah.
If the harbor district predated the village districts,
So it's probably this guy.
it would have been in 2004.
Okay. And you also have to think that, again, this isn't just specific to the lace factory, this is the entire harbor district. So, there are a couple more houses down there that are in the harbor district that, again, we go back to the marina.
Yeah. And again, the reason I raised that
Yeah.
is we have to look at the intent of why it was established before we kind of
Yeah.
tinker with it.
Right.
And I would suspect that it's trying to preserve specifically waterfront activity, because the marina is the, you know, the major component of it.
So I'd like to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, please.
So, the, let's see. Well, I don't remember who it was that did this, but there was, a zone, not really a zone, but, it talks about, Connecticut, natural diversity along the river.
Yep.
And, there's a map online, that shows that. And that natural diversity line, encompasses probably about 50% of the Statute property. And so that is in a region that is designated to be retained as natural diversity. That probably has something to do with the bald eagles that come to nest in the area and things like that. So,
So
That's the overlay.
yes, that's exactly what I was looking at.
So it's a natural diversity database.
Yeah.
And so any change to your property, if you're within that natural diversity database, you're supposed to send something to, their specific, this part of the, state. And they review it for, you know, if there's an endangered species in that area, if there's, a lot of it is, there's a terrapin turtle that they want to make sure you don't do construction X amount of time. There's a long list of things. So anytime, anything happens within that, you're supposed to get a form from them for guidelines.
What weight did they hold the decision making?
So again, it's all up to planning and zoning to take what they put forward, and you are guided by that. You can, I mean, again, planning and zoning can completely ignore it. But, you know, if you start to ignore a lot of the stuff that the state puts forward, they'll start going, well, I'm not gonna give you funding for anything. So, you know, same thing with FEMA. If you ignore FEMA rules, well, your town doesn't get any FEMA funding.
and I think we gotta be careful to focus discussion on the Harbor District. There's not an application in place that we're reviewing. Property that's being discussed is within that zone, and there's definitely some context issue there, but when it comes to diversity, that property doesn't necessarily contribute to it. So even in an evaluation of that regulation applied to the lace factory property, is like, well, it's not habitat, but the other areas here would have significant implications on that overlay regulation.
Can you put the aerial?
Because it's at an angle and I can't see, you want me to do that? Just a second.
Want me to turn that for you?
No, work it.
We have, potential for city sewer, no gas goes to the waste factory.
Yeah, I know. Layers. It's freaking throwing stuff down. That helpful?
Yes, thank you. And what do you?
Down there's this river lane. And there's a little bridge crossing and you're on it, or a railroad crossing and you're in. A lot of river lanes and roads in the Deep River. Somebody will fix that. But yeah, so that's, you know, that, again, there's not a lot of properties down there. But it would definitely affect this single family home, the lace factory. There's a couple waterfront properties and again, the marina.
So the interesting thing too about our zone bounding is that typically you're gonna find like uses in a zone on either side of the street. You don't use the street to separate zones because the character of one is not necessarily reflected on the other side of the street. And so that pattern of use really wants to be consistent all along the street, both sides. Not like you have a, you know, low density on this side, high density on that side. So our kind of gerrymandering of the zone is difficult, but I think the other issue to keep in context to this particular zone and the way it's been delineated, is that a lot of times the purpose of our regulations isn't to find the highest and best use, because sometimes the highest and best use in terms of conservation, not development, is least impact. So if you look at the area that's in here, it's all area that is not conducive to development, but does have that kind of buffer and those environmental, preservation of those environmental conservation zones. I think that has to be part of the discussion of what this zone is and what it should be.
I think I'm thinking, just real quick, and I'm brainstorming this, but I think a lot of this is cohesive because of what it used to be. So this used to be a factory, all along here has been a marina. This is a marina. So it's all like, that kind of use there. And this property specifically used to be part of the marina, and I forgot what it was. And this parcel and this parcel were attached at the time. So this is a more recent split off and this house is newer. So maybe that's why that newer house is in that zone. But I think there was some thought into how this zone laid out, even though it overlapped, like you said, over roads. It's not, the way it's usually done.
And historically,
Yeah.
ironically, there was a big, not a marina, but a boat building on Phelps Lane. That was the first use. And then they sold some of their property. I have no clue what's happened to my business. They sold that property to, oh God, what's his name? Somebody in Snell who developed the factory where the lace factory is. So it was before the lace factory. That was in the 1800s.
So, where I would go with the trajectory of this conversation is that the zone was really established to preserve the heritage of the waterfront activity. Whether it's marina or factory use, et cetera. Very much like the village districts were established to preserve the small town character, that it has value in being, and reflecting that the heritage of the location on a river. So that also being said, does it make sense that this district or this zone would want to be bigger because there were other properties, even though they may not have continued that use historically, they would have had that use. But I think that the permitted uses
Like my house.
Exactly.
My house was part of that industry.
Exactly. And that's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
If we were to establish this as a more understandable zone with an intent of preserving this
The
heritage
Tate house was part of that industry.
and environmental context, that some of the other properties that may be non-conforming would be within that zone in order to meet the intent of that zone, preserving a heritage and a ecology of the Connecticut River. So again, that's spitballing here, because I think it's a matter of understanding why these zones are, as opposed to, governing our regulations and our zones by opportunity.
I agree. I think that's it. Bob Kinder had a good point there, that a lot of those houses were old ship houses. I mean, you look at what they,
Well,
the
mine
Tate
wasn't even a residence.
right.
Mine was a store.
Yeah, and then, right, wasn't the Tate House was a hotel and,
Yep.
yeah, so,
And actually, a portion of the Tate House is one of the earliest buildings in Deep River.
Yeah.
So you have one of the three oldest houses,
Yeah.
well, three oldest houses in that area.
yeah,
So I begin to suggest that, that this Harbor District has the potential to be a small town version of the old Mystic Village.
Yeah.
Is that at least preserve what's there,
Right.
recognize what was there, and be restrictive on development opportunities, so you don't lose that heritage.
Okay, and I'm gonna throw just ask the question of, what do you do with the lace factory building?
Well, if it's for sale, that's, I think that's the number one thing we need to know. If the developer is interested, is it also available for anybody else? And let's play devil's advocate. Could the town buy? Right? I know,
Yeah.
it's, we don't have any money and there's all these
Right,
other
right,
things, but
yeah.
is that a possibility? Could a bunch of people that live at the landing pull their money and buy it? Well,
And then what do you use it for? I guess that's where I was going to.
So you have a precedent in Guilford,
yes.
where the town recently purchased a restaurant that went out of business. Got state funding and DEP funding with the intent of preserving that site for use of the residents and the public. That it had a higher and better use from the town's perspective as open space as opposed to tax generation by allocating their, that prime piece of waterfront property to commercial use.
Yeah.
That's,
No, that was, I just read that article too. Yeah, I forgot all about that.
I think that's what we envisioned at one point,
Yes.
sort of either a town place or a neighborhood,
Yeah.
art openings, that sort of civic things.
it does serve a very important civic function as it is right now. If you go down there any time of the day, any time of the year, you will see residents parked looking at the water.
Yes, of course.
And as a public resource, public amenity, I would view that as being the most valuable one that we have.
Great.
Because access to the waterfront like that, just to launch a boat or to sit by the water.
Yeah.
Is something that is becoming scarcer and scarcer and is not recoverable.
That's right, I agree.
Because once it changes, it changes for good.
So I had a question with the Valley Railroad. I know it runs through Harbor District, and I know that's a linear state park. How do those two things work together? What sort of say or impact do we have on it?
So I think that I think Valley Railroad leases use of the property from the town of Deep River, and that agreement, I think, is due for a renewal in a year or two. There are also, the railroad does present significant opportunities, been discussion for years about a greenway along that in terms of connecting the towns with a bike path, a walking path, or, again, public access. There's a lot of ways that those have been realized over the years, whether it's a, bike trail or even the amenity of the railroad itself is actually has commercial value in terms of its revenue generation from tourism. But there's also, some allows some public access.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think the Valley Road actually realized that. That's why now you can rent the bikes that you ride down the railroad tracks. And so, I mean, you have to go to Haddam for that, but that's a possibility of that here too. So again, I've always said, I think we should capitalize. I know the train for a long time was, a sticking point, but I think they're better owners now. That were there before. Well, I think, I don't think we're gonna make a decision tonight, but I think a lot of good information came out of this. We have to look at, it's expanding the harbor district. We should go back and look at the zoning map when this came about, see if we can find the discussion about this. I did search the archives through the minutes, but again, it's not an easy search. So I didn't see anything, but now that I know there's a village, it was discussed during the village district, that might be a.
Well, I will tell you personally, I think for all of us that we appreciate the transparency.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, does it make sense? Is there federal and state funding if we increase the whole harbor district?
Again, they like.
I mean, how many towns have water, access waterfront?
You'd be surprised how much money is available. Sometimes you have, takes a special person to find it sometimes, but.
Well, we haven't had a special person fight.
So that it's, again, water dependent use is actually a term that DEP has in the regulations for stuff like this. Again, they don't want overdevelopment of the property, they want public access. So there's tons of money out there for that, because Guilford just got $4.4 million to cover that cost.
So another one that has money for buying land is the US federal government.
Yes.
US Fish and Wildlife,
Yep.
has areas targeted right along the Connecticut River. They own a lot on the other side of the river, not much on our side of the river, but they have a lot of money.
Yeah, they just got a big chunk.
Yep.
Well, it's always a good idea to be sure that it's in the POCD for the money to
Yeah.
come. I mean, that's the main point of having these discussions. But I did have a question. Do we have an update on the St. John's property, which abuts that area?
The last anybody's heard is there's an offer in, but again, don't forget that's in the courts. That could take forever.
Yeah, fair enough. But again, with an overall planning of what we would like to see the area, I don't think we can discount that large parcel that's right next to the small area that we have access to, of what, how we'd like to see it go. And that, as it goes through the courts, that could actually be entered in. It's like, well, the town would like to see this happen to it, So, but I guess if we don't have an update, we don't have an update.
No, but I think that what you're saying kind of falls in line with what Alan was saying. Does the Harbor District need to expand? And my gut is yes, it should expand. There's clearly areas we just talked about that could be part of that. Especially if the overall goal is something, like you said, like Mystic, which again gets thrown around Deep River quite a bit. So
I've heard that several times, actually.
Yeah.
That's fun.
So. All right, I mean, we got homework to do. Is anybody else, any more questions or concerns or?
Is there gonna be discussion about this at the next meeting, or is this just being tabled for a while?
So, the developer, I'm sorry, his name escapes me, that he did want to reschedule. Something came up at the last minute. He wants to reschedule, so we will definitely do this again. My assumption is the first Wednesday?
Yeah.
So it'll be next month, the first Wednesday of the month. Okay. Same time, same channel.
Mike Riccio.
Yeah, I think that the difference between those discussions, though, is that the POCD discussions, they can be visioning and it's also a balance of the conservation side, the development side, and broader patterns of use is, again, I would argue that somebody in Winthrop has much vested interest in this as you do as living in a neighborhood, because this is all of Deep River's access to the Connecticut River.
Exactly.
So huge value there to every resident in Deep River. But when it comes to changing regulations and zones, it has an impact on your property, character of the property, use of your property, and it's our responsibility to preserve that.
Look, I also want to thank you for having this discussion with the developer not here, rather than canceling it, because I think it was nice to have us have an opportunity to have this discussion independently of the developer first.
Well, it's also just, it's not just that one site.
Right.
Before I forget, Nancy actually went through and found this. So the Harbor District was added to the regulations in November of 1996.
Oh.
And it was to permit light manufacturing and a bunch of other things. So she must have a copy that she's going to forward to me, right, Nancy? Thank you. So get some legwork done.
That's interesting.
So is there any light manufacturing in the Harbor District?
The place back at the time, yeah.
The real.
And that wasn't in it.
Well, that was
empty.
even before 96.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was empty, right? At 96?
Yes. Because I don't remember exactly when the lace mill went out of there.
Yeah.
I think maybe in the 80s.
I thought it was 1990.
It may have been about 1990. Yeah.
Okay.
There were several years before.
Okay, so I mean, again, that's not all the stuff that we need, but again, like I said, I will definitely discuss this again next month's meeting. Cause if we're looking to expand, et cetera. You know, we definitely still want to talk to the developer, so.
And find out what, like, is it for sale?
Yeah.
What's the deal?
Yeah, I'm gonna send an email.
Yeah.
Or have Zoe send an email.
That'd be great.
Any idea what, no, I know he's talking about doing multifamily, make a condo or something. Did he have a number of units or?
I think 15 or 16.
Yep, 16.
See, these guys all know.
16?
16 units.
16 one-bedroom units?
Yeah. Which was and that was, so it doesn't add to the, you know, the push in the school. But I'm not 100% on that either because our school numbers are down.
Schools at 50% banding, so I mean.
Yeah.
We can take a couple more kids, no problem.
Yeah.
But 16 unit, so you're talking 16 to 32.
Yes.
People being added in a.
Right.
Finite area.
Would any of those units be, 2-bedroom?
They said it was just one, but we.
I think there were two units that were gonna be 2-bedroom,
Yeah.
full size.
Yes, that you
Yes.
look into that.
So those were the existing, no?
No.
Oh.
So I have another question, if you know. Is it just, those 16 units going inside the existing building, or are they planning on expanding it at all?
No, they-
Yeah.
Just the existing footprint?
And again, I think we gotta kind of fall back from talking about, there's no real proposal on the table. They were asking about the concept. And when you think about the concept of a high density residential, we're restricted on, duplexes. So if you wanted higher density, where's the appropriate place to put? I think that's the bigger planning issue at hand is, if we wanted to increase our population, what's the appropriate place?
Just because multifamily may fit here, may not fit here or here.
Yeah.
Right, because it covers the whole district.
Water, gas, sewer. How far does it reach down River Street?
We have sewers and.
We have sewer, and we have potential to sewer, water, no gas. It goes to the bend and stops.
It's short of it.
Yeah, Portland Street has no gas.
I didn't even know there was gas in that.
Yeah. Come down Main Street, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also down River Lane, so down to the boatyard, so
Is that the red line?
sewer is red, water is blue.
So
So
that's, sorry, that's sewer, gas, sewer,
sewer and
water.
water. Gas is just down Main Street,
It's only down.
but they wouldn't share the map with me, so it's not on the GIS.
That's fine. So it doesn't, so there's no gas out there. All right.
No.
But they do have water and sewer.
And again, it directly affects this area too, because they are also on water.
But even if that's the budding zone of Harbor District is medium density, right? It's not low density.
Yeah, it's R6.
So south of River Lane would be low density. So,
Yes.
so we brought the water and sewer to a low density area before we covered our medium density areas.
They closed the
That makes sense.
But that,
because it was a problem
uh-huh.
with existing sewers or septic systems, excuse me.
Oh,
But that's,
they had a need. That's why I went there, is what she said.
Yeah, it's in the past.
Decision remains there. Okay.
Again, I mean, you do, from a waterfront standpoint, you do kind of want to get your those things on sewer, so, but, like Alan was saying, there are other places that need it, but it's water over the bridge.
Or under the sewer.
All right, any other questions, guys?
Just never thought so.
All right. I guess we got homework to do and we'll talk about this again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
no other aspirations?
Aspiration.
So. Just gonna jump back to the, I know Zoe was gonna send stuff for the POCD. She's got that nasty cold that's going around, so did get it
Oh.
to us.
Okay,
It is on the list, so she's gonna get us something that's pretty close to completion, this week,
all right.
so. I think that pretty much covers all the PSP stuff.
Anything else?
Yeah, my house is.
No, that's everything I got.
Okay, so
Provisioner for the,
For the shipping industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, through the, this is for the first 50 years of it.
well, I guess we're adjourned.
Seconds.
Oh, it's,
Probably the 1920s.
They haven't adjourned yet.
Yeah.
we're just adjourned.
Oh, I was gonna say, we're adjourned and it is, I think, 7:15.
Okay. And I'm gonna pick this right back up for the land use commission meeting. However, I'm just gonna bump that because this meeting and the December meeting were, the December meeting was after our, or before our other meetings, and this one's after, so nothing has happened, or the other way around. Nothing's happened in between, so there's nothing to discuss. For any of this stuff, I had emails from everyone for land trust, except for design review. So we're just gonna bump this, and I will see you in 2 months.
Okay,
And we're gonna call that meeting through. Easy enough. All right, guys.
there's a UConn basketball game, so I want to go watch it.
All right, guys. Everybody have a good night.
Have a good night,
Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
See you guys.
My house.
Bye.
Yeah, you